Hi, in a conversation about telling our story, our Jehovah's Witness story, or ex-Jehovah's Witness story, it came up that I actually feel conflicted about what I would like to talk about. If you haven't seen part of my story on ExJW Analyzer, you should totally check it out. I'll put a link in the description below after I upload this video to really share with you a couple of things about my story. But what happens is that I tend to want to share a lot of different things because there's a lot of different parts of the story that could potentially be useful to somebody else because they're walking through it. An example is a lot of people ask themselves, I see that this is not the truth, this is a cult and it's a destructive one. How do I go about talking to my parents about it? I know one of them has looked into it. I know the other one is super strict about it. But is there a way that I can still talk to them and not destroy that relationship? And I wanted to share that, first and foremost, that is going to be a choice that you have to make. You have to make that choice. Nobody can make that choice for you. You don't have to become an ex-Jehovah's Witness activist. You don't have to be like me and take news articles, translate them to your local language, and send them to the press, which I probably have to redo because I see that it hasn't actually been published, which makes sense because there's a bunch of other things happening locally. So it's always a good thing to keep going and keep trying. But let me just share my personal story. What happened when I finally uttered, no, I will never return to the Jehovah's Witness. So it first started with a conversation I was having with my mother-in-law. She's the mom of my husband, and I have known her since I was 20. I've known her for a long time. And regardless of her personality type, which is very controlling and very, she holds on to everything, like she's got control over it and she wants to rule over it. Basically, most of the people around her just play along with her, except me. It's not in me to fake. I just say what I think, do what I want, like my hair, which the first time I cut it, she was like, you're gonna let it grow, right? And I was like, no. She was like, but Kingdom Hall. And I went, excuse me. I grew up in a congregation that was fully black. All the Caribbean brothers of the local area, like Aruba is not an English-speaking island, but we do speak English. What I mean by it's not an English-speaking island is because there isn't really, the whole island's, the official language is not English. It's actually Papiamento. And so when you have a group, it's kind of a minority group. The congregations around here that are English-speaking are mainly islanders from the neighboring islands. So you got Jamaicans, you've got Grenadans, you've got Sabians, you've got people from, Trinidad and Tobago, you got friends coming over from Martinique, Dominique, where they speak French and they speak English. That's how the other language groups that grew here. We had a Patois group, a Creole group, we have a Filipino group, we had the Haitian group. Those were all in our congregation. They were literally Bible study groups in our congregation. As they grew, they got second hall meetings and so on. And so, I used to go in field service with a stack of different languages of what does God require of you. So I could hand them, if somebody originally spoke Patois and they understood English and they could defend themselves in English, we would still encourage them to study in their local language, in their original mother tongue. And that was one of the parts that I really loved about being a Jehovah's Witness, was serving people in their own language. It's something that I found phenomenal. But that said, I grew up in a congregation where everybody else was African descent, black. I'm just going to say it. They were black. I don't have any other word for it. I've never been, I don't consider myself racist at all. And maybe that's just a misunderstanding of my own misperception. I don't know. Forgive me if I offend you by referring to all my brothers and sisters of color as black. There were all kinds of shades. You had light black, lighter skin to darker skin, light eyes to dark eyes. I remember there was one brother who was a lovely old brother that we used to go in field service with and go to his house, and the students used to come to his house, sit in his yard because he was having a difficulty walking. He was really old, like 90 something, and his name was Brother Meyer. And Brother Meyer had green eyes. He had blondish hair, but it was African hair, and he was brown, dark brown. And you ask him, and he's like, yeah, because he's super mixed. But in any case, point being, I grew up in a congregation where most and everyone around me was African. And if you know something about African hairdos, is that the women that are of African descent do amazing things with their hair regularly. Like, I had a Brother Meyer's daughter. I used to be in field service with her a lot since I was a little girl, 9, and she was a grown up. She was like in her early 20s. I used to be in field service with her, and she would, in the beginning when she was really young, she would always wear her hair, her natural hair, and it's braids, different cuts, relaxed. She did all kinds of things with her hair, and then, she'd have her sides shaven and the top curly. She'd have braids on top and the sides really tight. I had another sister that was my friend, and I would spend weekends at her house after field service. She wore wigs. She had a whole collection. She had weaves, and she had these little, I don't know what they're called, but they were like little curls, and then her whole head was like all these little individual curls coming out, and she had also like the wavy pattern short hair. So in my world, even though in my family culture and tradition, having long straight hair like we do, you have to have your hair long, that's a woman's beauty, no cutting your hair. So I used to be a teenager that cut her hair a lot. I colored my hair when I was 20 the first time, because before that it was taboo. So I grew up in a household environment that was extremely strict about how to wear your hair, in a congregation where every week the sisters would change their hairs. And one day I was sitting at an assembly, and in front of me, an older sister, wife of an elder, she had blue hair. And another had extensions woven into her braids, and they were gold and orange and blue, and her nails were leopard print. And I was just going like, how come they can do anything with their grooming, but I can't? Well, it's not that I can't. It's that I was forced into that ideology. So I started to play around with my hair, and I am probably not going to be able to put the pictures, but one of my first hairdos was I caught, first time I did with the hair, I actually shaved all of my hair off. All of it. And that wasn't because I wanted to have that look. I wasn't having a Britney Spears level meltdown. Maybe I was. I don't know. Midlife crisis kind of thing, But I did it because of lice. My kids had lice, and it was overwhelming. It was too much. And with this much hair, and right, mind you, right now it's not a lot. It doesn't look like a lot because I'm shaving halfway. But if you have double the amount of hair, it's super heavy, it's super thick, and I have it all the way to my hips. So I had a lot of these arguments with my mother-in-law about my hair, about my things. I got a tattoo. I'm disfellowshipped, and I needed something for a very specific purpose, and it's somewhere on my back. I can't see it. That was the whole purpose of the tattoo. Be somewhere, I know it's there, but I've left it behind me. And it had to do with verbal abuse in my family. I was like, I'm putting that thing behind me. I'm like getting a tat. I don't know if you might be able to see it. Probably you saw it. I don't know. But in any case, I could not be controlled by my mother-in-law, who she was on operation get her son back into the congregation because he'd been inactive for many, many, many years, and then me and him got back together because we were engaged when we were teenagers. Is a whole other story. Not teenagers, in my 20s, and I got this fellowship, and it was a mess. But she had an agenda. And I realized this afterwards, right? Because before that, I just thought, well, she's being kind. She said, my son is disfellowshipped because he's getting married to a woman who got divorced without biblical grounds. So, well, we moved in together first. But he gets disfellowshipped, and she says, well, he's still my son. Family ties are not broken. We can still talk. We can still be in touch occasionally, not too much, not talk about spiritual things. I'm like, okay, you see it that way. It seems like a double standard right in front of me. Like, my mom is doesn't even answer my phone calls, and my mother-in-law, she texts me, she messages me, we have coffee. I don't visit her all the time, but we talk a lot. I mean, I talk more to my mother-in-law in the last 2015 to 2018. It's 3 years. She would bring, clothes for me. She would do all kinds of different things. And I really believed that we were building up a relationship. And I am the kind of person that a relationship has to have honesty. I'll just tell you what I think. I'm not going to be disrespectful or mean, but I'm going to tell you. And so she asks me, in one of those conversations, she asks me, so are you ever going to go back to the Kingdom Hall at all? Like, flat out. And I knew it was coming. I had my indication that she was coming for that question, because she's been tiptoeing around the matter for a while. And it was coming. My husband always told me, you gotta watch out with my mom, because she never does anything. She's a tit for tat kind of person. So be ready. Be ready for it. It's gonna come out. Don't get too comfortable around her. And I did, because I'm the kind of person that I'm gonna give it 100%, and then if it doesn't work, then it didn't work. So I'm sitting there, and she asks me point blank, and I told her I don't think so, honestly. And she asks me why, and I made the mistake of saying the truth, what I really thought. And I thought, you guys don't teach, the Jehovah's Witness organization doesn't teach the Bible's truth, the whole biblical truth, and Jesus isn't given the proper place. And I tried to word it in a respectful manner by saying, I've been studying the Bible, because I had, when I decided to go back to the Kingdom Hall, which I had a year and a half before that. I said I'm going to go back to the Kingdom Hall. I started attending, and I had the baby, and I was there with the baby. I went to the memorial while I was pregnant. That's 2017. And I was like, I was seriously considering coming, but this time around, I wasn't just gonna, jump in without really personally going through the process. What's the process? Well, you study, you do like the Bereans do, and you make sure these things are true, and then you make a commitment to whatever movement, whatever the agenda is of the movement, but with an open and clean heart. And I wanted to go through that. So I did. I started reading, I was meditating, I was praying, but on my own. And I think that's what made the difference, because I was on my own. I was able to not be molded and shaped into something. And her countenance changed. She went from open and friendly to and this was her face. So, you're telling me you have extra special wisdom, and it has become clear to you that we don't teach the truth. And I said, well, yeah, you actually don't allow people to study books outside of the organization. How is that even trustworthy? Like, your website, you understand, I build websites for a living. If everything is on the matrix, on the database, who is to say I don't change something without telling anybody? And then when people go check the information again, it's like, oh, it's what they said last week. But 2 years ago, it said something else. It's a huge danger. And with that attitude, she went, "That's not what we do. Not at all. In fact, we're encouraged to tell people. We tell them, we don't know everything, but we can look it up together. And we go on jw.org. So we research." But her attitude shocked me. I was sitting there like, this is weird. It's like a switch, Jekyll and Hyde moment. And we got interrupted, which was great. It was the godsend. Jehovah's Witnesses arrived. I'm not supposed to be at her house, supposedly. So she hides me in her bedroom. Yes, she hides me in her bedroom. She says, go with the baby. I'm standing there and I'm thinking all kinds of things, like, oh, the hypocrisy and all that. And then I realized my arguing with her about it is purposeless, is fruitless. So I will not tell her anything else. And I'm just going to tell her, you know what, I'm sorry. I'm disrespecting your boundaries. Your boundaries are that you believe what you want to believe and you want to follow what you want to follow. And that means that you're going to have distance in our family relationships and you want to have it that way. The truth of the matter is actually that we don't have a lot of time to spend together. You have so many responsibilities, and I so appreciate the time that you do give us and the time that you do share with us. So therefore, I am going to just let it rest. I respect you. I respect what you believe, and I am just going to honor your request. And it could have ended there. I really think it could have ended there. Except I am not perfect. And I did something I should probably not have done. And probably by admitting this, other people are going to say, see, you deserve the attack and you deserve to be beat up. But no, nothing I did or said warranted being treated that way at all. Nothing. Zero. Whoever wants to use that against me is got the darkest heart in the world, because no one has a right to attack you physically for an opinion or a point of view. Period. No one. I don't really remember why, but a week later, because of that conversation and because of the way she went Jekyll and Hyde on me, I was now thinking it's time to open the Jehovah's Witness Pandora box. The one I avoided months ago, because I was researching Christians and Bible-believing pastors that talk about why they're not Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I came across a lot of channels, and I had come across the whole Charles Taze Russell pyramid link and channeling and arms deals and symbology, like the crown and the cross that's really from the Masonic lodges and all those things. Like I'd come across, it was an hour and a half expose, and then he finished with the gravestone of Charles Taze Russell is a pyramid and so and so. And my initial reaction was, well, those are all circumstantial at best. Like, you're connecting things, and I'm not a fan of connecting things. Like, oh, because he used this symbol, he must worship Satan. That doesn't work for my brain. It's like, because I'm a creative person, I draw and I paint and I sew, and sometimes I'm sitting there thinking I want to make a drawing and I just start playing and it ends up in a shape. Imagine if somebody would accuse me of Satanism or Hinduism or some other ism just because I drew something that to them looks like something evil. I can't buy that. I can't. So I did it. And that was why the first time I opened the box of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it being apostate and whatnot, and it being evil or harmful, I closed the box right away. The second thing that happened when my mother-in-law did that was I started to think about our life. My husband and I are both Jehovah's Witness kids, except he got converted after in his teens. His mom became a Jehovah's Witness when he was a teenager. His sister became a Jehovah's Witness baby before that on her own. My parents were Jehovah's Witness when I was born. My father, same story. So it's all I knew. And I always felt like the things that my parents did that hurt me, which I'm going to talk about more, because I definitely feel, I've been thinking of what's my role in this whole Jehovah's Witness movement, the ExJW community. What do I bring to the table? What is missing? What is needed? Because there's so many people talking. There's so many things being talked about. I don't want to be repeating what everybody else is saying. My story has to actually help somebody. If not, I'm going to shut up. That's how I feel. So it hit me that I am going to talk about family units and socialization of children and self-esteem, because those are the things that got tampered with in this journey of being a Jehovah's Witness. A kid born in a Jehovah's Witness organization, how, it's kind of like being sacrificed at the altar of Moloch. In a sense, you're burned. You're burnt. Your emotions are burnt to a crisp. Your self-image is burned to a crisp. Everything is smoked up. You're a smoky baby. I mean, I didn't do that to my kids. And I'm certain that there's families that don't. But there's a lot of verbal abuse and mental abuse, religious abuse going on in Jehovah's Witness organization. And we got to talk about it from the perspective of a kid. I was a very insightful kid. I'm just going to go out and say that. I remember I was 8 and I saw my parents, the way they kissed each other, and I thought, those two are weird. They're not in love. Something else is up. I don't know what it is that they're doing, but it looks wrong. And I was 8, okay? 8. And I saw the way they kissed each other, and I was like, it's weird. There's no emotion there. It's like, hi. It was weird. And I knew my parents were going to get divorced. I knew it. I knew it back then. And it happened. And when it happened, I was pissed. But that's a story for another day. So the second thing that happened was I started to assess our family lives from the perspective of, was it a result or a product of this belief system? And probably my husband's family life got reshaped. So I can't talk about him, but I could talk about mine. I could certainly talk about mine. Mine was entirely shaped because of the Jehovah's Witness belief. My father, he believed that I was being disobedient as a baby. So 2 months old, spanked. Okay, my father bragged about it in a sense. He was adamant that I had a really rough type of personality. I was angry. And by the way, it's not that I'm not capable of anger. I'm definitely capable of anger and emotions that are volatile, and I can be very passionate. Definitely. But that has nothing to do with a 2-month-old baby who's barely, adjusting to life outside the womb. Psychologically speaking, science shows us that small babies cry a lot, not because of anger, not because of resistance, not because of rejection to their parents. These are misconceptions in the minds of people who have been twisted around. My father's mind was twisted around by information he received. And it wasn't just the Jehovah's Witness books, by the way. My father read a lot of different books, psychology books. And there was a time when psychology books said that children were born tabula rasa, with nothing, blank slate. Then there was a time period when it said that children came out with this wild monkey. They were in an animal state. They needed to be tamed. Okay? So I don't blame my dad for coming to the conclusion that that's what was happening. But the format that he used to correct that and control that all had to do with his view of the world through the Jehovah's Witness lens. Don't spare the rod so you can beat the crap out of your kid to set him straight, so I can walk on the path and never leave it. And for a time in my life, I wanted to prove that I will never leave the path and that my parents were successful. That was a huge pressure on me to perform in that way. Why? I don't know. I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that's the pressure I felt. So it's a two-way street. What parents are doing to their children doesn't just affect the parent who believes he's doing something good. It also breaks down a kid. And the expectations laid on parents affect children. Children are reading those magazines. They're sitting in those meetings and they're hearing the definition of a good kid. What is a good kid? They are. They are. And they're absorbing all of that and they're self-applying all of this. And before you know it, you have a kid who walks around thinking, I lied. Satan is the father of the lie. Satan is my father. And all the things that are of Satan will be pitched into the fire. Or refuse. I consider all things refuse. I'm a piece of shit. I lied. I'm a piece of shit. That's what happens in the mind. Okay, listen. You can tell me all you want that most kids don't realize this and don't talk about it, but I see it. Because all these reasonings are being absorbed. The language, they understand it. Kids may not be talking. Like my son started talking when he was 3.5. They may not be talking, but they understand everything you say, everything you read, everything they hear. I was sitting in a congregation and I was listening about the Shulamite maiden, and I realized that because of statutory rape situation when I was 14, that nobody stuck up for me, but they blamed me and they hit me with, you suck and you're bad and you died. Basically, according to the Mosaic law, you would have been stoned to death. So you should be thankful you're still alive. Those were the kind of things being said, being conclusions drawn from Bible scriptures, like parents sitting with you with their Bible and they're reading it, and so we can understand that this is what it means. Wow. Isn't God good? Because he sent his son to die for you and buy you back. But you would have been dead. Totally dead and stoned to death. Wow. You're dead to me, actually. That's what happened to me. It literally happened to me. I saw this granddaughter. I was at my own funeral, basically, when all that stuff happened with that guy when I was 14. My whole life flashed before me, and I said, well, if I do have AIDS, which is what they thought I might have, because, of course, doom and death and disease, which I didn't, but I sat there and I thought, wow, I will never be a mom. And I won't be the doctor I want to be. Because I'll be dead before I even turn 28. And I already done the math that it would take me this many years to become the doctor I wanted to be. And my life lost meaning after that. It did. I mean, maybe I came forward and asked for forgiveness, but it didn't feel like I had been forgiven by anyone. And my family certainly didn't forgive me. They didn't. I lost all value. And then the Shulamite maiden story about if she proves to be a wall, we will decorate her. And if not, we will board her up. You know, sexist shit like that. I'm going to say it just the way it is. It's sexist shit. So now you feel like you deserve, like your whole family puts a wall up against you and closes you out and ignores you, and you have no hope. Like, I couldn't become a pioneer anymore. I wasn't clean. I couldn't become a Bethelite or a CEO's wife or marry an elder or marry anybody who had that kind of goal. So I remember there was a young boy in our circuit that we knew since I was a little girl that I thought he's gonna study medicine too, and he would be an elder, which he is. That guy is out of the list. Like, scrap him. Don't even look at him. Those were the things that went through my head at 13, at 14, at 15, because of all these things that happened and how they were handled. No one came to me and said, you know, you've come forward. We love you. And the first time any relatives of mine really conveyed after all of that they really loved me, I was 18. 4 years later, I had one aunt write me an email, write me messages on Yahoo, and she has no idea to this day. She rescued me out of suicidal thoughts because she really literally finally said she loved me. And it touched my heart. I just needed to hear that a lot more often than all the fire, the brimstone, the Armageddon, the destruction, the qualifications, the qualifiers, the disqualifiers, and be reminded that, oh, you're booted off the island now. I'm sorry. You can't get Holy Spirit anymore. And this mentality is rooted deeply into the Jehovah's Witness organization, into their culture. It's not something that comes from my family culture. Even though my family also has a very classist mentality, which I know and I'm very aware of it and I see it very clearly. That in and of itself would have only pushed me to be the kind of girl who's very picky about boys, who's very picky about her career, who's very picky about her clothes, who's very like snobby. But because I was a Jehovah's Witness full time, that snobbiness got kicked out of me because I was a failure already by age 7. Because, I lied. My father kept accusing me of lying even when I hadn't. And I was like, Satan is the father of lies. So I am the daughter of Satan. I'm trash. I will be burned with all the carcasses outside in Gehenna. And talking about this in one of the Facebook groups I'm in really helped me to realize why I need to talk about this. I need to talk about this because I hope that one aunt, one grandfather, one grandma, one sister, one cousin will realize the kind of hell their Jehovah's Witness relative kid is in mentally, where they're tormented constantly about these self-judging, self-denigrating thoughts, and with their same mouth they hold on dearly. Like it's like they get a scan with an x-ray that says that all their insides are worms, and someone tells them, if you hold on to this rock, like got my crystals that I found out in the wild. Yeah, I'm into crystals now. Energy from the sun. But if you hold on to this thing all the time, I swear all the worms will disappear. But if you don't hold that crystal in your hand, they're going to come crawling out of every hole that you have. So hold on to that crystal for dear life. It's the only hope you've got. That's what the Jehovah's Witness organization does to people. That's what the indoctrination does. It turns them into people who hold on to this one thing as if it's going to cleanse them. But that thing, whoever's providing it, is also giving them the disease. It's telling them that you are utterly disgusting. Now, I'm not going to say that people don't have flaws and that people don't have room to grow, because they do. But I'm going to say that that is like the most wicked thing you could do to a child. Tell them that they're worthless. Pieces of garbage. Worthy of being thrown in Gehenna with the corpses and the dead dogs and the trash, if they don't do what you tell them to do. And because they're children and they're gonna fail, guess what? Every time they fail, they believe they deserve nobody fucking deserves that. It took getting pregnant and seeing that little baby, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, for me to realize that there is no crystal valuable enough for me to sell it to my child that way. For me to tell him that when he makes mistakes, he's worthy of destruction. and throwing away. Never. Never. And it's a difficult challenge, I tell you, because that thing is wired in every aspect of my personality. That's what mind control and indoctrination does. And so I'll find myself sometimes saying things and going, I have to sit down with my son or daughter and explain to them that mommy made a mistake, but mommy loves them and she really wants to make it up to them, and she wants them to know that those things are not true. She was speaking out of line and out of bonds. That doesn't exist in Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, it's something people struggle with because they say this, I shouldn't have done that, I should have said that, but you did this and that. Do you know when you talk like that, you cancel out everything you said before but. You are admitting that you were wrong. Stop there. Release it. Love yourself. Love your children with no buts. That is unconditional love. That is what we call unconditional love. And our world needs it direly. It needs it because humanity is groaning in suffering. The Jehovah's Witnesses are not the only one. I specifically talk about Jehovah's Witnesses because that's what I know. I can't talk about anything else. I don't know Bible-believing Christians or Jews or Muslims. So, love. It gives peace that excels all thought. And I remember the scriptures from the New World Translation format because they were what I knew all of my life. And I will remember them. But it also says it so surpasses all thought. So our human thinking is flawed at best. But if we take in love, we can have peace that even if we might not be right, love covers a multitude of sins. It covers it. It's like a bridge. So why do we need to indoctrinate our children with anything else? Why indoctrinate at all? And that was it for me today. I appreciate you for watching. If you want to get more videos talking about how to free families from the indoctrination and weaponization of family units through the deactivation of natural affection and peace in the home. That's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit more. And still also about my journey about how there are other streams of thought that can serve you in your spirituality. They don't necessarily have to be biblical, strictly Christian or Bible believing. So that was it for me today. Have a great day. Bye.